It's about the build server protocol and fresh ideas. So, what kind of build server protocol? Have you heard about that? Probably not. And what kind of ideas? Well, we'll figure that out, right? So I just came from Krakow on Thursday, where I gave this more or less the same presentation together with Jorge. Uh, Unfortunately, he's not here today, so I might have to simulate him for parts of the talk. But I'll introduce him anyway. So, yeah, Jorge has been working at the Scala Center for a while now, and he's all over the place in what he does, working on various build tools, on the Zinc incremental compiler. He's contributed to SPT, Scala C, whatever. So yeah, you can see his obsession is developer productivity. Myself, yeah, I'm more obsessed with complaining about developer productivity, about build tools specifically. I've been working at JetBrains for a while, not quite 2 years yet, on the mostly integrating the SPT support into IntelliJ Scala plugin. I believe in tools before rules, so I think you should, if you can automate a process, automate it and don't write it. I think I'm in agreement with Rory, who said that yesterday. Yeah, so this is what it's about. The BSP idea. What's the idea behind the build server protocol? And what is the protocol? So I'll present a bit about how the protocol looks, so you have an idea if you want to implement it for your favorite tools, how to do it, and how it's going to be integrated in IntelliJ, for instance. But yeah, what is this about? You might not even care yet about what I have to say, but you're here, so maybe you do care. That's a good start. If you don't yet, I'll try to convince you and see what I found out while working on this. So, story is, I met Jorge just actually in Krakow a year ago at the previous Scala Sphere conference. At the time, we were both working on SPT-related things. Dale Weinand of the SPT team introduced us to each other and said, Jorge, have you met Justin? And I was like, yeah, we might have something to talk about. And we did have something to talk about, especially as of a few months ago when John Purdy inaugurated the Scala LSP and STP working groups. Have you heard of that? Yeah? Has anybody heard of it? Yeah, a few have heard. The rest, yeah. We're trying to improve the state of Scala tooling overall, because there's not, as of yet, a lot of cooperation going on. We have a sort of fragmented ecosystem. We want to work together a bit more. Jorge pitched this idea to me, and I was listening. Well, he pitched it to everyone, but I was listening. So we have, but what's behind this idea of BSP, build server protocol? So we'll have a overview. We have lots of what I'll call language servers here, tools that give you live feedback on what's going on in your code. So we have IDEs like IntelliJ, Eclipse, of course IntelliJ, yeah. Where it's integrated with editors, and others like Enzyme or Dotty, where we just have a server-side tool which communicates with editors over a protocol. More recently, the language server protocol has gained traction. Yeah, we have editors. I could have listed IntelliJ here as well. Yeah, that's your interface. That's what you work with. And we have build tools as ultimate source of truth, even if the truth in the case of Scala compiler is a little buggy. But we want to faithfully represent these bugs in the editors. And for that, we need some sort of communication. So what I've been doing with SPT is writing SPT-specific support in IntelliJ, communicating with SPT. It's not always been really easy. There's bugs in IntelliJ, bugs in SPT, and some of these problems, issues, I only run into when trying to integrate them. You wouldn't usually run into them from the SPT shell. And I've been spending like a good chunk of my almost 2 years at JetBrains on this. So if I want to integrate with all of these are just JVM build tools, and it's not even a complete list. So let's say I spend half my time on SPT, I can maybe integrate with one more of them, and then nobody else gets any support unless the build tool developers specifically support IntelliJ. Well, that sucks. Yeah. I only have so much resources. So, yeah, I guess it's helpful to define a protocol here. And, you know, protocols, good idea. We've had them have the internet running on protocols. Seems to work fine. But not all of these protocols are successful. So, like, I suppose some of you remember IRC or XMPP. Yeah, you remember, or you don't. They're still around, of course, but they've kind of lost adoption among big players. Why is that? I think it has to do with that it's hard to evolve protocols, add features when you need to agree on these new features between many different vendors of server software, client software. And the result is I have like 12 messengers on my phone. But in the build tool case, I think we're in a little different situation. We have to agree on certain protocols, or nobody will get to work with anybody unless you put in huge amounts of work. And we have a relatively small user base as a Scala developer community. So I'm hopeful we can agree on some stuff. So, and this attempt to agree is the build server protocol. Jorge and the Scala Center have just put this out there. It's still in development. But it's an attempt to formalize the communication between language servers and build tools, or editors for that matter. It's very much based on LSP. Have you heard of LSP, the language server protocol? Many, not all? Yeah, that's a protocol that you can implement to communicate to an editor the state of your program, so you can call a compiler, for instance, from an editor and get live messages on where there's compile errors going on. And it's developed by Microsoft, originally for VS Code. I think now various other editors support it already. And there's many language backends. So that has made it much easier to support many languages for editors, as opposed to the approach we've been following in IntelliJ so far, which is writing specific support for a language in the IDE, and which is something that we've had to do for other editors as well. So likewise, BSP creates the opportunity to reduce the n times m complexity problem of providing a high-level support for any build tool in any editor or client, or so on. So that would be nice to have, I think. And maybe Sam Halliday here agrees. So he has very specific ideas of what a good editor is. He's been maintaining Enzyme for a long time. But in the end, he wants to work together with his team, who maybe prefer IntelliJ most of the time. So we want to enable people to work together with their preferred tools. So yeah, that's what made me pique my ears when Jorge pitched the build server protocol. So here's a little diff of what we're looking for from a build server protocol as opposed to not having a build server protocol. Basically, I just want something where I don't build tool-specific support, where I don't make a one-time effort, where I can share code between solutions for each build tool and have it more robust, maintainable, testable, everything. So maybe you're interested in building something, adding support for such a protocol in your favorite editor or build tool, so that your build tool works with IntelliJ or your editor works with Pants or whatever build tools will support the protocol. So what does it look like? It's essentially a JSON RPC protocol because that's cool these days. But as requests and responses, as many client-server protocols do, but also adds the notion of bidirectional notification. So at any time the server can notify the client of something that's happened or vice versa. And yeah, this is designed to work together with an LSP implementation in a language server, but expanded by methods that are specific to build tools. So more than just compiling a list of files, but actually putting various elements together. So as I wrote here, you can, there's some messages that are reused from LSP. And let's look at the server lifetime. So simple steps. We need to fire up a server, initialize a connection, do some stuff which is not in this list, and eventually shut it down. And how does that look like more concretely? So I want to send a request. I want to initialize the server. I'm the client. Jorge over here simulated is the server. I say, Jorge, I want you to initialize. I want to work with you on building the software. And Jorge says, okay, please give me the URI of where your build is located. That would usually be a root directory on the local file system. And tell me, can you do Java? Can you do Scala? What languages do you handle? Okay, Jorge, I'll send you here this root URI, and I can do Java and I can do Scala. I am IntelliJ. Okay? Jorge receives this and acknowledges, okay, cool. Let me tell you what I can do with these languages. I can compile, I can run tests, I can discover tests, and I can tell you where your files are. I say thanks. I'll give you another acknowledgement of this. So, please be ready to work with me. This sort of looks like a TCP three-way handshake. What's next? Next would be actually requesting some useful info or compiles. But since we're still with a server lifetime, after that, I want to send a shutdown request when I'm done with you. Okay. Jorge, shut down, please. Jorge, yeah. Okay, I gotcha. I will initiate my shutdown, but I won't shut down yet because then you might not receive the request before I'm done. You might not receive my response before I'm done. Okay, got your response, but now please exit. Yeah, okay, bye. Okay, but now more to the data structures of how does a build look like. We have a common notion of what a target is. But what is this target? In IntelliJ, it would be like a module, so which contains a root directory and various source directories. In SBT, it's a subproject, but a subproject combined with IV configuration, so what dependencies specifically to execute this code with. And so to represent this, we've got an ID, a display name, just to make it nice for the user, languages which are in this module, and some various data which can be language specific. Got more requests to inform about how the build looks. In this case, workspace buildTarget params, which is basically just a list of targets which translates on IntelliJ side to a list of modules. DependencySources is another thing I can ask Jorge about. Okay, I have my targets, Jorge, but I would like to display. I would like the user to know where are his sources, what do they depend on, and Jorge can tell me again. Yeah, it's just these lists of URIs, usually files, local files. And once we're through with that, we have a nice project model set up. And then I actually want to delegate some work. I don't want to compile anymore on my own IntelliJ. I need help now from the build server. So I'll just send a compile request, which is just a bunch of targets to please compile them. And likewise for tests, of course I could run tests on my own, but it would be nicer if the build server, compile server would just run these tests for me. So again, I can just give him a list of targets to compile, to test. In the response, you'll have some a compile report, which is optional because tests may imply a compile. But and just some list of passed and failed and ignored. But looking back here, okay, we've also just got a list of errors, warnings, time, lines of code, cool. But what about the actual compile errors? Where do they happen? They get updated while you run the compile or test, and they get published as diagnostics, as notifications from the server to the client. And then I and IntelliJ can actually show these files. Show these errors and link to the files. I guess that's helpful. Likewise for tests, I could show this test has failed now and it took so and so many seconds. And there's a bunch of other methods. I don't want to go into detail here because that'll just bore you. I noticed some are already bored. And okay, cool. I'm a Scala developer. I develop for the Scala plugin. But some of you probably want to, I don't know, compile COBOL, right? So can I do this with BSP? And of course, the answer is yes. So far, this protocol is language agnostic. But each language has its own peculiarities. So we probably need some kind of extensions for languages. In the case of Scala, this includes which standard library to use, what platform, like if it's Scala JS or JVM or Scala native. And with this information in the Scala plugin, I can set a Scala SDK, and that tells the plugin that these sources are Scala sources. You can compile Scala. You can create Scala files here, index this stuff as Scala, please. And then I will actually have a usable IDE for Scala. And this is just another request. I won't go into that now. And another interesting one is maybe I want to discover test classes, because right now in IntelliJ we discover test classes on our own, but we need some specific support for each test framework. Wouldn't that be nice if the build server did this? And then I could just put my little run icon next to the tests and the test classes without even writing specific support for that. So some of this is already implemented, some isn't. Further on the roadmap, we've got several other things, like we'd like to add file watching. Personally, I'm more excited about remote compilation. That's something many have asked us about, because laptops are apparently never enough to compile Scala quickly, especially not if you use some underpowered MacBook Airs or something. So it would be cool if we could delegate this compilation to a remote server. But that's maybe not that straightforward. We have various challenges, like we have to pass through diffs to the server, keep the state synchronized between client and server. But it's an interesting problem to work on. Yeah, so this thing is still in development. So we're looking for feedback for tool-specific integrations. Vim, VS Code, Sublime, Atom. What about IntelliJ? Yeah, I've implemented a bit, because you know this concept of conference-driven development. Like 2 weeks ago, nothing of this worked, but now I can maybe show you something. So I've got my idea here, and I want to import some project. I got Spark here, why not? And I just click BSP, next, okay. I want to build modules when I save a file to have a fast feedback loop. And it opens up, still empty window. Oh, we've got a file tree, syncing. Okay, not quite 10 seconds. It's a bit small, isn't it? But you get the idea. You have the whole Spark tree, the whole Spark project represented here, right, in IntelliJ. Let's check out how the files look. Source, main, Scala, and the core module. Open some file. Looks like it's highlighted correctly. What happens if I add some kind of syntax error here or something? I get a compile. Quick compile. I've compiled this before, so I'm not compiling the whole thing. And it shows me a clickable error message. That's nice. Cool. And somehow I'm ahead of schedule, so why don't you just give me comments or ask questions? Meanwhile, I'll fix this compile error. Oh, compiled. Success. That's good. I'll add it as a hidden feature in the next 2 weeks or so to the 2.18.2 nightlies. You can follow my Twitter account to see how to enable it. And I hope someone is interested in actually implementing this for some build tool. So here we have bloop running in the background, which implements BSP already. Bloop is a tool written by Jorge, among others, which serves basically just as a compile server, and it doesn't handle things like dependencies like SPT does. But it's possible to export a SBT project as bloop, and then import bloop via BSP into IntelliJ. Straightforward, right? Any other? Yeah, Rory?
Hey. There's a distinction between BSP and LSP, right? So things like semantic highlighting and all the other stuff comes through the LSP protocol.
Yeah.
And in this case, bloop wouldn't provide that, right?
That's
that would
right.
Be something else.
So in this case, IntelliJ provides it.
In this case, IntelliJ provides it, but for other editors, maybe some other service.
Yeah, for other editors, you might need to communicate with two servers, like a BSP server and an LSP server, or a server that provides both in one.
And there was a debug protocol announced, I think, as well, wasn't there?
For BSP?
No, not for Bloop, for a debug server protocol, a DSP, I think.
Oh, I haven't been paying attention.
Well. Cool.
When we work with build tool, we think about such entity as project. In IDEA, we also have project, which I differ. We have think about something like unified definition of project, language independent, which I guess will be very good and simplify the word.
Excuse me, unified.
Are you thinking about language independent definition of project? What is project?
In terms of IDEA of the IntelliJ platform?
Yes, no, tool can say that project have name, have dependencies, and something like this. And if this will be launched independent, no, I just want to know our idea thinking in this direction.
I didn't quite understand the question, sorry. So if the BSP provides a unified...
No, we have entity project.
Yeah, we have a project in IDEA.
And we have model of project in IDEA, which is one. Model of project in SBT, which is second. Model of project in Cargo, maybe, which is third. Yes?
Yeah.
Maybe we can find something like universal format for projects.
Yeah, that would be great. But I haven't come across attempts at this yet. And, well, the notion of project is fairly unified across most tools, but we can discuss the details where it doesn't mesh together maybe afterwards. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, talk to me. Give us feedback on this protocol. It would be helpful.